Yes, my people, it is your boy VRD, and this is a continuation of the commentated drive between Ashford down Sidings and London St Pancras International. Part 1 was comprised of us taking a Class 395 Javelin out of Ashford down Sidings and into Ashford International Station. Part 2 is the remainder of the journey up to St Pancras. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Right, we are now down to a minute prior to our scheduled departure time. The platform starter signal has now cleared to a green aspect with a letter U in the theatre box display. That tells us that we are being routed onto the up line, which is our desired line. That is the line that runs into London St Pancras. If we had the letter D, that would also be routing towards London St Pancras, but that would be on the eastbound track in the westbound direction. So I'm going to reset the driver reminder appliance, and we're now down to 15 seconds prior to our departure time. So I'm taking a glance at the CCTV monitors, pressing the door close button. And the door interlock light on the Class 395 Javelin is a bit dodgy. It lights up as soon as you press the door close button, which is not how it functions in reality. That should only light up once the doors are closed and locked. So you have to actually listen to the sound of the doors closing to know when it's safe to depart. Now that the doors have closed, taking a final glance at the CCTV monitors, a final glance at the signal, I'm going to turn off the cab light. F and R switch can go into forward. Selecting the minimal brake position, observing a reading of 30% on the brake gauge. Releasing the brakes, immediately selecting power notch 1. Waiting for that brake gauge reading to fall to 0%. And I'm going to up the power to notch 2 for now. I didn't use the hill start button because we already tested it on the departure from Ashford Depot. Speed limit departing Ashford International is 40 kilometers an hour, which translates to 25 miles an hour. So I'm going to reduce the power down to power notch 1 to have a controlled rate of acceleration up to that speed. I forgot to mention that when you convert to drawing power from the electrified overhead cables, the speedometer will display your speed in kilometers an hour instead of miles an hour. And then when you're drawing power from the electrified third rail, that is when your speedometer will display your speed in miles an hour. So we got up to 40 kilometers an hour there. I shut off the power, but we are currently climbing up a bit of a gradient, so our speed rolled down to 37 kilometers an hour. So I just used another burst of power notch 1 to maintain 40 kilometers an hour. Once we are clear of the point work, the speed limit will be increasing to 100 kilometers an hour. So I'm just going back into power notch 1 to accelerate back up towards 40 kilometers an hour. We should now be clear of the point work, so I'm going to go into power notch 2. At 50 kilometers an hour, which translates to 30 miles an hour, we need to perform a running brake test. So I'm doing that now. Shutting off the power, I'm going to apply about 80% braking and observe a reduction in the speed by 15 kilometers an hour. Once that happens, releasing the brakes. Once the brake gauge falls to 0, I'm going to go back into notch 3 of power. And as you can see, the TVM signaling system has now fired up. So we now need to obey the command that is being displayed on the dashboard there. We currently need to be doing no faster than 100 kilometers an hour. So as we get closer to 100 kilometers an hour, I've reduced the power. I've now gone down to power notch 2. Just to have a controlled rate of acceleration up towards 100. We got up to 99 kilometers an hour, so I've now gone down to power notch 1, and our speed was beginning to fall off a bit. We are currently negotiating a very steep climb, so it is a bit difficult maintaining speed. The TVM display is now displaying a reading of 225, so we have now been permitted to accelerate up to 225 kilometers an hour, which translates to 140 miles an hour. Full steam ahead. Full electric ahead, I should say. Okay, that was not funny. Oh gosh. Yeah, it's quite a high workload departing from Ashford, so I was getting a bit overwhelmed with the commentary. I'm not sure if you could tell. So yeah, while we're driving along this section of high-speed track between Ashford and Ebbsfleet, there are actually quite a few gradient changes, quite a lot of steep gradients, so I'm gonna have to manipulate the power applications in a very specific way to prevent us from exceeding 225 kilometers an hour, which is the maximum speed for the majority of the journey into Ebbsfleet International. That is basically gonna, what I'm more or less gonna do is I'm gonna shut off the power to allow the speed to, or maybe not shut off the power, just reduce the power percentage to allow the speed to fall off a bit just before passing over the summit of a gradient. And then once you pass over the summit of a gradient, I'll shut off the power and I'll allow gravity to bring the speed back up to 225 kilometers an hour. And what that does is that just allows us to maintain the speed and not exceed the speed without needing to use the brakes. So it cuts down on the wear and tear of the train, and it also provides a smoother ride for the passengers. So we don't need to worry about it yet because we're nowhere near that stage of the journey. We've only just got up to 200 kilometers an hour now. 200 kilometers an hour translates to 125 miles an hour. Now that we're up to 222 kilometers an hour, I'm going to reduce the power to power notch 3, and that should balance us out at that speed. You don't want to be accelerating all the way up to 225 because you don't have any leeway for any unexpected acceleration. It is very hard to make out because of how dark it is, but we are currently passing through some loops. So those loops are a good indication that we're approaching the first major summit. So what I'm going to start doing now is I'm going to allow our speed to start coming down. So I've gone down into power notch 2, and that should let our speed start reducing a bit. Now that we're down to 217 kilometers an hour, I've gone back into power notch 3. We're down to 215 and our speed is still coming down, so I've gone back into power notch 4. And there is a tunnel coming up. When we pass through that tunnel, I'm going to shut off the power. So we're passing through that tunnel now. I've shut off the power. That tunnel marks the major summit, the first major summit of our journey. So we're now going downhill on quite a steep downward gradient, so our speed is going to begin to roll back upwards towards 225. And as you can see, we're now at the bottom of the gradient. So that little tunnel that we just passed through just now, that marked the bottom of the downward gradient. We're now climbing again. So I've gone back into full power. This time it's not too steep of a climb, so full power seems to actually be giving us a bit of acceleration. Our speed's now balancing out at 222 kilometers an hour. I'm now going to reduce the power back down to power notch 2 because we have another major summit coming up. In fact, we've already passed over that summit. So I've had to apply the brakes a bit, unfortunately. It's been quite a while since I've driven on this route, so I'm a bit rusty on the route knowledge. So yeah, just applied the brakes to bring us down to 220 kilometers an hour. That tunnel that we just passed through there marks the bottom of the downward gradient. So I've now gone back into full power. And we're now climbing again, a very steep gradient, so our speed is still reducing even though we're in full power. And we're up to 222 kilometers an hour, sorry. So I've shut off the power. We now have 2 more major summits that we need to negotiate. There's one that isn't too far from here. I can't actually remember exactly where it is. So I'm just kind of anticipating it. I'm trying not to accelerate to too high of a speed. I'm going to let the speed balance out at about 215 kilometers an hour or so. Yeah, I think it's coming up now. So just shutting off the power now. Yeah, we've now passed over that summit and our speed should begin to roll back up towards 225. And I've had to still tap on the brakes a bit because our speed was about to exceed 225 kilometers an hour. I probably should have done a practice run because, yeah, see, we even now we still ended up exceeding 225. Yeah, I'll do a practice run next time before recording this because it has been quite a while since I last drove on this route. So yeah, I'm a bit rusty. And it's night time as well on top of that, so yeah, this is quite difficult. So I went back into full power because we reached the bottom of the downward gradient there. We're now going to be climbing up into the North Downs tunnel. And North Downs tunnel is the second to last major summit on the section of track between Ashford and Ebbsfleet. But it's the last major summit that we'll have to worry about, because when we pass over the last major summit, we're going to be slowing down for Ebbsfleet International Station. If you weren't stopping at Ebbsfleet International, then you'd have to worry about that additional major summit as well, but we don't have to worry about that. So now that we're passing through the North Downs tunnel, I'm going to shut off the power. And I'm actually going to let our speed roll all the way down to about 190 kilometers an hour, 195 maybe. And that is because there is a massive downward gradient on the other side of North Downs tunnel. So yeah, we're doing 199 kilometers an hour. Exiting North Downs tunnel, which is actually too fast, so I feel like I'm going to end up needing to apply the brakes a bit to stop us from exceeding 225. I feel like I've been saying I feel like I've been saying miles an hour a lot by mistake, because the commentary, it is a bit overwhelming, because there is, believe it or not, there's quite a high workload driving along here. So if I've been saying miles an hour by mistake, I apologize. And yeah, we're up to 225 kilometers an hour, so I've had to tap on the brakes a bit to bring us down a bit. Now releasing the brakes, and we're at the bottom of that massive downward gradient here. We're now passing over the Medway Viaduct. And on the other side of the Medway Viaduct, we're going to be climbing another massive hill. Yeah, I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to come back and revisit this and do it properly, because this was a bit of a disaster. I've gone back into full power, by the way. I don't know if I said that. Sorry guys, stretching. Oh my gosh. Right, so these bridges that we're passing beneath, they mark the final summit on the section of track between Ashford and Ebbsfleet. So I'm going to remain in full power, because we should get a command to begin slowing down. So I'm now making an immediate minimal brake application. The TVM display is now flashing at us, so that tells us that we can expect a reduction in the speed limit. And the TVM display has now changed. We can see we have the number 200 encased in white diamonds. That tells us that we need to be doing 200 kilometers an hour at the next marker board. So the next blue square with a yellow triangle inside of it, we need to be doing 200 kilometers an hour by the time we pass that. And we're already down to 188, so we don't need to worry about that. But I'm going to continue maintaining a minimal brake application, because the TVM display is still flashing. When the TVM display is flashing, it means that you can expect another reduction in the speed limit. Once it becomes solid, it means that we have no further reductions in the speed limit. So TVM display is now showing 160 in white diamonds, so we need to be doing 160 at the next marker board. So I have increased the braking force very slightly, and we passed the marker board doing 166, which is over the instructed speed, but it's within the 15 kilometer an hour threshold. So yeah, as long as you're doing within 15 kilometers an hour above the speed limit, when you enter the next section, you won't get an emergency brake application. Anything above 15 kilometers an hour above the instructed speed, you're going to get an emergency brake application. And finally, I didn't get to explain it, but we had a 130 indication in white diamonds, but it was solid, so that tells us that we don't have any further speed reductions. And the 130 is now on a black background, so that just means that we need to do 130. But that being said, we are coming into Ebbsfleet International, so I am increasing the braking force quite significantly. Entering Ebbsfleet very hot here, so I'm gonna up the braking force quite significantly now. We're almost at maximum braking, in fact. And I'm now gonna reduce it to minimal braking. Yeah, I did get, again, I got quite overwhelmed with the commentary there. I almost forgot to actually drive the train. And we're just looking for the 12 carriage stop mark, which is right at the end of the platform here. Luckily, we actually entered the platform at 70 kilometers an hour, which is too fast. You want to be doing 50 kilometers an hour on the entry into stations. So yeah, just stopping with the stop board in the window there. Perfect. Full service, neutral, and we have a door release on the left. Sorry, on the right, not the left. Oh boy. Right. We don't have a signal, but our TVM display is showing a reading of 130, so we are good to depart. Checking the CCTV monitors, pressing the door close button. Doors have closed. Door interlock light is illuminated. F and R switch into forward. Releasing the brakes, waiting for that brake gauge reading to fall below 30%. Power notch 1, and when the brake gauge reading falls to 0, gonna select power notch 2. Just have a gentle rate of acceleration because we are currently driving in the leaf full season. Up to power notch 3, and I'm gonna up it to power notch 4. Next station is Stratford International. We're currently gonna be we're gonna be driving over a section of track that I previously traveled. Oh, get it together, Kieran. We're gonna be passing over a section of track that I previously covered in my Faversham to St. Pancras video. So yeah, the line that just converged to join us, that is the line from Gravesend. And we're up to 127 kilometers an hour, so I've shut off the power. Speed limit is currently 130 kilometers an hour, but will shortly be increasing to 225 kilometers an hour. Yep, there we go. So back into full power. This is the Thames Tunnel. And we're now climbing quite a steep gradient out of the Thames Tunnel, and we're going to be passing over the summit of that gradient as we pass beneath the Dartford Bridge, also known as the Queen Elizabeth II Bridge. So here it is coming up now, and we're now passing over the summit, but we can remain in power notch 4 because we are only doing 180 kilometers an hour, which translates to, I haven't got a clue what that translates to. If I had to guess, I'd say about 110 maybe miles an hour. Now starting to cut back on the power, back down into power notch 3, as we were getting closer towards 225 kilometers an hour. I'm going to reduce that down to power notch 2, and as you can see, our speed is sort of balanced out at 224. You can see that the downward arrow is flashing and disappearing constantly, so that means that we are just about decelerating. We're now officially decelerating. We're passing over a bit of a summit here, but I'm actually going to shut off the power now to prevent us from exceeding 225 kilometers an hour. Our speed rolled up to 222 and is now beginning to fall back downwards. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump between power notches 1 and 2, and I'm going to let our speed fall down to about 217 kilometers an hour. And that is because we're about to enter a very, very steep downward gradient as we enter London Tunnel number 2. So we're down to 217. I've now shut off the power, and we've now entered that very steep downward gradient that I was talking about. So our speed should now roll back up towards 225. So our speed is balanced out at about 222. I've just gone into power notch 2. Now reduce that to power notch 1, and again that just seems to be balancing out our speed at 223. Actually, our speed is starting to fall off a bit, so I'm going back into power notch 2. And it looks like I'm just going to be bouncing between power notches 1 and 2 to maintain 225. Not long from here, we're going to be slowing down for Stratford International Station. What I'm actually going to try to do in my commentary, it's a very long process, but I'm just trying to work on becoming a lot more articulated. I feel like I talk a bit too quickly. It doesn't really sound too professional. But yeah, we just got our command to expect a reduction in the speed limit, by the way. So I've applied a minimal brake application. Normally when you're under TVM signaling, if you do a minimal brake application, when the TVM display starts flashing, then that just brings you down on a fairly decent deceleration curve on the approach to a station. That is excluding the approach to Ashford International, but I'm going to cover that in another video at some point. I'm going to up the braking force a bit, that being said, because we were coming up on the 160 limit a bit too fast. Just scraping off a bit more speed, now reducing that down to minimal again. So yeah, as I was saying, I'm going to try my best to work on how I articulate myself. It is a very good life skill to have, so yeah, that's one reason why I enjoy making these videos. Since I started this channel, I have become a lot more disciplined with a lot of things. Just I didn't realize how much work it is to actually own a YouTube channel until I started this channel up. It is actually quite demanding, so yeah, I'm quite pleased. Hopefully I pick up a lot of life skills along this YouTube journey, and I'd like to thank everyone that is currently supporting the channel. This is just the beginning. I do actually have faith in myself. I feel like this is going to be a huge channel. It doesn't seem like it at the moment, but I'm having faith. Hopefully I accomplish massive things within the train sim community. Right, so we got down to 100 kilometers an hour and I shut off the power. and I continued to let our speed roll down to 80 kilometers an hour. And as we exited that tunnel there, I made a minimal brake application, and on the approach to Stratford International in both directions, that if you make a minimal brake application at the exit of the tunnel, providing you're doing 80 kilometers an hour, that brings you into the station on a very decent deceleration curve. So keep that in mind. So yeah, momentarily releasing the brakes. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a complete makeover of my voice. It just doesn't sound too professional. Especially I'm trying to, my goal is to have a whole professional sort of mentor drivers thing going on within my YouTube channel. So if I'm talking like this, it's not going to be a good look. But anyway, just using a bit of minimal brake application and a bit of release to come to a nice and controlled stop at the end of the platform here at Stratford International. Now that we're at stand, full service, neutral, and we have a door release on the right. So yeah, I'm gonna, do you know what, yeah, from now, from this exact moment, I am now going to articulate myself with perfection. So from here onwards to London St Pancras International, and in every video from here onwards, I am going to be articulating myself with perfection, because this whole talking fast thing has got to go. I just can't stand it. It sounds immature, it sounds childish. It's not a good look. I'm not going to get anywhere in life if I keep talking like that. So yes, from now on, I'm going to be articulating myself like a librarian. It's going to be extraordinarily forced at first, but I'm hoping that my brain gets used to it and it just becomes a natural thing for me, like breathing. It's not even funny. Why am I laughing? Right, we are down to our scheduled departure time, so I'm glancing at the CCTV monitors. Our TVM display is displaying a reading of 100 kilometers an hour. I am pressing the door close button. See, already I feel a lot better just talking like this. This, honestly, I just feel a lot more mature. A lot more, yes. Our doors have closed and locked. Taking a final glance at the CCTV monitors, F and R switch goes into forward, releasing the brakes, selecting power notch 1 as the brake gauge falls below 30%, and once the brake gauge falls to 0, I select power notch 2. I'm going to maintain a power notch 2 application for quite some time. I'm now going to increase the power to power notch 3. And the TVM display should change, there we go, to display a reading of 225. So we are now permitted to accelerate up to 225 kilometers an hour. So I've gone into full power. That being said, we will not long be needing to, not far from here, we will be needing to begin decelerating to St Pancras International Station. As you can see, the TVM display is already flashing at us, but we're only up to 165 kilometers an hour, so we don't have to worry about that for now. We're now up to 180 kilometers an hour, so once we get to the next TVM marker board, that is when I'm going to get my minimal brake application in, and that should help us meet the braking curve. So yep, about now. What I normally do is, when I'm in a situation like that, when I'm accelerating up towards a speed limit but there's a reduction in the speed limit, I imagine myself traveling at the maximum speed, and then I think, okay, so if I was slowing down from the maximum speed, at what point would I be doing what speed? And that helps me sort of meet the braking curve, if that makes any sense. I don't think it did. But yeah. So again, just reducing these speeds down to comply with the TVM display. I can't wait to do an ultimate guide on the Class 395 Javelin. It is quite an interesting train. Right, so we got down to 95 kilometers an hour. I'm actually going to release the brakes. We still have a flashing display on the TVM screen, so we can expect another reduction in the speed limit. We now have an 80 in white, an 80 in white diamonds, but that is now solid, so that tells us that we can expect no further reductions in the speed limit beyond 80 kilometers an hour. Although there actually is a further reduction in the speed limit, it's just not under the TVM signaling display. TVM signaling system. Core blimey. So 80 kilometers an hour is the last speed that we have to comply with on the TVM signaling system. The TVM signaling system. My commentary's just gone out the window, but thankfully we're not too far out from St. Pancras. So yeah, I've just remained in the off position here to let our speed gradually fall down. Speed limit is currently 80 kilometers an hour. It will be reducing to 60 kilometers an hour at this green signal that we're approaching. And it will then be, there's no speed board for that 60 mile an hour speed limit, by the way, so just keep that in mind. Kilometers an hour, guys. I meant kilometers an hour. And then it will be reducing down to 40 kilometers an hour at the signal protecting London St. Pancras International Station. So that signal that we just passed is the second signal out from London St. Pancras, and the signal approaching now is the signal that protects London St. Pancras International. So we got down to about 36 kilometers an hour. I'm now releasing the brakes to bring our speed back up to 40 kilometers an hour. We are currently on a very steep downward gradient coming into St. Pancras. And yeah, I'm now remaining in the minimal braking position, and we are barely decelerating. That is how steep the gradient is coming into St. Pancras. And I'm going to aim to enter the platforms at about 22 kilometers an hour. Now releasing the brakes. 22 kilometers an hour translates to about 15 miles an hour. And the KVB display over here should start showing us some number zeros. I can't for the life of me remember what they mean. I think 2 zeros means you need to be traveling at no faster than 30 kilometers an hour, and I think 3 zeros means you need to be traveling at no faster than 15 kilometers an hour. I might be wrong. But anyway, about 3 carriage lengths away from the buffer stops, I'm gonna reduce our speed down to 10 kilometers an hour. So yeah, you can see that we have the 3 zeros on the KVB display there. And I'm now using a final series of minimal brake application bursts to bring us to a controlled stop as the buffer stops disappear beneath the windscreen. Right, we made it. Full service neutral, set the DRA, open the doors, do the outro, and conclude this pathetic excuse of a video. Oh yeah, headlight switch in the tail position as well. F&R switch into off. Remove the master key, deactivate the relative safety systems. There we go. Right. Oh boy. Checking the tail lights. We have 2 red tail lights being displayed. Perfect. I'd like to thank you guys for watching this disastrous commentated drive. Constructive feedback and criticism is more than welcome in the comment section below. Now, but all jokes aside, I'll do a couple of practice runs on the section between Ashford and Faversham, and then I'll come back and revisit this. I said Ashford and Faversham. What is going on? Ashford and Ebbsfleet, and I'll come back to this and do it again at some point. Constructive feedback and criticism is more than welcome in the comment section below, and if you'd like to further support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. I will catch you guys in the next one. Love.